Hello, welcome back. I'm joined by Christian Taylor-Wilkinson, the CEO over at Altona Rare Earths. Christian, good to see you.
Afternoon, how are you doing?
Good. Exciting couple of weeks recently for the company.
Yep.
You're obviously looking to list, or you are listing on the London main board. Before we get into that, a little bit of your background and the company at the moment as it stands.
Altona Rare Earths, we are a fairly small mining exploration company. We're focused on developing rare earth projects in Africa, in southern and eastern Africa. There's about 4 employees based in the UK, and we've got a team of maybe 25 to 30 now down in Mozambique on our first project. So we currently have one project which we acquired last July. We started drilling work towards the end of 2021. And a couple of weeks ago, we published a JORC target estimate, just to give a flavour of what we're hoping to be when we publish the main resource estimate in Q1 next year. So we know basically the size and the grade of the resource, which is looking at very significant, far better than we first expected when we walked into this deal. We have been on Aquis since 2019. Before that, we had a spell on AIM. It's been our desire to get onto the LSE. The LSE obviously is a global brand for a company that's looking to make more acquisitions in a continent like Africa. It's important that you carry the right paper, I guess is the way to describe it. And the LSE, obviously, it gives the people who you're doing business with a lot of confidence that you've passed the various checks and balances to get onto the LSE. So that's what we're trying to do at the moment. We just raised £1.1 million. That's conditional on completing the listing. And in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be working with the FCA, who are like the gatekeepers to any company joining the stock exchange, to pass through the final committees, answer the last questions. And fingers crossed, by the end of September, we will be fully fledged, signed up member of the LSE, where people can buy our shares. And one of the things, well, I suppose the other reasons as well is Aquis, whilst it's done very well for us, we've raised almost £3 million on Aquis. Our trading patterns have been very minimal. Liquidity is very low. Obviously, the LSE being a global exchange, it opens the trading into Altona to 100% of the market, whereas I think Aquis, you probably look at 10 or 15% of the market. So I think one would hope that our projects, our assets in Africa might start getting a bit more recognition, and the share price might start reflecting the value of those assets, and certainly the potential value of those assets.
Let's talk about the assets
Sure.
at the moment. So obviously you've got the one asset at the moment in Mozambique.
Yep.
But from my understanding, the desire of the company is to be a multi-asset rare earth company,
Yes.
right? Tell us a little bit about the strategy and what you know about this asset.
Okay.
At the moment.
So Montemambe, it's a carbonatite formation. And in the rare earths sector, different geologies have different hold a different array of the rare earth elements, and there are 17 of them. They're subclassed as heavy and light. Predominance of the heavy rare earths are mined in China, in what's called ionic absorption clay. So ionic clay is what they're called. China has been doing this for about the last 15 years, completely stolen a march on the rest of the world. Reports are saying that their stocks are running low, and by maybe 2028, an alternative source from China will be needed. So there is an ionic clay mining company in Uganda at the moment called Ionic Rare Earths, which is listed in Australia. They're doing incredibly fast work because there's no drilling through rock. There's no crushing, milling. You're going into soil, sand, clay. So it's a very much quicker process. So that's a target that one of those targets that Altona is looking for. And we were actually talking to a company in Malawi last year about it. And we were supposed to be signing a deal beginning of this year. But the project sat within a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And the local communities were already quite riled by the previous owner, which was a Canadian-Japanese joint venture. So we thought, for our first venture into, let's say, ionic clay rare earths, this is probably not the best one. Instead of spending millions of pounds and the government saying no 5 years down the line, we called a halt at the moment. So we're out looking for alternatives, and down the east side of Africa, southern east side of Africa, there are plenty of undiscovered properties, which our Chief Operating Officer, Cedric Simonet, who's been living in Africa for 25 years, has this rare ability to find. He spends his life looking at maps, plans, data. So we've got a hit list of maybe 10 targets. So beside Monte Mwambe, going back to that, which is a hard rock carbonatite, typical mining, you've got to go through a number of years of exploration work, drilling holes, drilling more holes, infilling those so you get a good idea. And we're just at that stage now where we're getting a clear idea of the ore body, how it sits in the earth, and the length and the width of it, which we'll talk about in a bit, I guess. It's a great first asset to have, but spending my life working in the city, what I've seen, or how I've seen companies fail in the past, especially mining companies, if you're sort of there doing some drilling work for 6 months or 9 months, you haven't got anything to announce, your shareholders, especially your retail shareholders for small caps, they kind of get bored and they drift off, don't they? And so when the big news comes out, the share price might pop up to where it was a year earlier. We've sort of decided that we can take the burden, as long as we can keep bringing the money in, we'll take the burden of running 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 different projects. So they're all different stages of exploration, production. Some we can sell, some we can take to production ourselves. So we're also, so whereas Monte Mwambe is possibly a 5-10 year project to get to production, we're looking at some of these smaller 1 to 2 million ton projects where there may not even be exploration work. The rare earths are sitting in the soil 1, 2, 3 meters below the surface. So it's more of an extraction. Build a small plant, extract it. And these are the projects that you could get into production within sort of 2 years. And for the UK and European governments, this is really key in someone like Altona, coming along and offering almost their services to do this supply for them. And these sort of mines might produce sort of 20, 25 million in revenue a year. Their mine life might be 5 to 10 years. And it would help obviously part fund some of the bigger projects that we're looking at.
You're an investor looking at this, say, for example. So you've got the one asset at the moment in Mozambique.
Yeah.
But really what you're saying is that the upside potential here is the M&A that you're looking to do over the next coming 6 months to a year.
I'd say the next year or so.
Yeah.
We could sit back on our laurels with Monte Mwambe and just have that as a project. This is comparable to some of the AIM-listed peers who are also exploring for rare earths. We're looking at up to sort of 57 million tons. We're looking at total rare earth oxide, which sort of is a measure of the bag of the 17 rare earths. Some are worth, $1 a kilo. Some are worth $1,000 a kilo. So you look at the bag, and our trio figure is about 1.65%. And within that, there's a high density zone, which we've clearly demarcated. Of about 11.5 million tons at sort of 2.7% trio. So this is not only a sizable project. Some of the concentrations of rare earths minerals in the soil, in the rock, are world class. The asset's not huge; it's not hundreds of millions of tons, but as our COO geologist Cedric says, he would rather have a smaller project, which is clearly formed, delineated in the rock at a higher grade than maybe 100 million tons at 1% trio, which is still obviously viable, but it means less waste, less digging, less extraction costs.
Yeah, of course. Okay. This actually, you've mentioned that project there.
Yeah.
There is a pathway for you guys to increase your ownership, right? Because at the moment, just run us how that works.
Okay.
In terms of how much of the asset you own at the moment and what milestones you need to hit to increase that. Okay.
So the milestones are based on a farming agreement we signed last year with a company that's owned the license for the last sort of 14, 15 years. So it's been renewed every 3 years like clockwork. When we first entered into it, we acquired 1%. We've just now acquired, so we did a period of phase 1, which lasted about 6 months. Phase 2 started on the 12th of March. And we had sort of the go, no go decision a couple of weeks before. And of course, we said go because we already knew what we were looking at. So now we have taken control of 20%. And we get the next 31% to take us 51% on the 12th of March next year. We can already see from this JORC exploration target that we want to go. I don't know. I will have to look into this. Do we maybe take control of them 51% now? As we approach this listing, it'll certainly be a reassurance for investors. Or I don't know, maybe we'll continue to wait and follow the plan and take control of 51% next March. The last stage, a year after that, or 2 years after that, because the final phase is a 2-year drilling program, we go up to 70%. That's where that's the capped.
Brilliant. Okay. So there is a clear pathway to 70% ownership.
There is, yeah.
With the 1.1 million that you're looking, or that you will be raising, dependent on listed on the LSE, what's the use of funds of that 1.1? Is that mainly on the acquisitions of the other targets, or how much of that is going on drilling on this project?
Majority is going on drilling. We've stated that we're going to produce a resource estimate. That needs a certain level of holes. Cedric wants to drill 6,500 meters, and I think we drill about 4,500. So we've probably still got around 10, 15 holes to drill throughout September, once the funds come in, maybe October. The rainy season starts the end of November, so we still have a couple of months, 3 months to go. Then we send that information off to the assay. So, and the assay costs, because you've got to ship all this stuff down to South Africa and across to Australia. So one of the largest costs, probably £150,000, is shipping and the analysis costs of the samples. So I say probably half of that is probably going to go into Monte Mambe. The other agreements we're looking at, they will be possibly royalty agreements, maybe farming agreements. We're quite lucky that we've been using shares for acquisitions. The people that we're dealing with, very happy to sort of sit and wait and realize the shares that they take in 5 or 6 years' time. So we have set aside a portion of that for legal, technical due diligence. And then it's up to us to see how fast we want to crack on with them. It could be that we have to go and raise more cash next year. If we are successful and we get some, let's say 2 more projects, which are looking to be exceptional, then why sit on them when we can deliver them? And I think obviously if we have that sort of data, we can take that to the market, to investors, and they'll be investing into Altona purely on the back of, developing 2 new projects.
Looking at the long term, so at the moment, your market cap as it stands, about 3 million, right? And that's, I assume most of that's weighted towards the 20% of the Mozambique project is in the value there.
I think £800,000 is in the books for Monte Mambe.
And then there'll be about 1.1 million in cash, and then wherever else.
Yeah.
What's the corporate strategy in terms of, you're talking about there finding these shallow, easily processable, ionic type deposits. So it sounds as though the real catalyst here is trying to find these projects that can get you into cash flow in a much faster rate, similar to the projects, I believe, that Rainbow Rare Earths, those type of assets that are smaller scale, but very high grade and quite easy processable.
Yeah.
That's the sort of model you're going for. Then those type of deposits, cash flow you get from that, you can then decide to invest in either other projects or whatever else. Is that right? That's
more or less. We do have 2 or 3 quite significant mines that we're looking at.
Okay.
The best way to describe at the moment rare earths, especially in Africa, it's a land grab situation. You've got Americans, Europeans, I guess the Chinese, though I haven't come across any yet, all trying to get hold of these assets. The various African governments have probably learned a variety of lessons over the last 20 years, especially if you look at the Congo, for example, with the cobalt. There are a couple of significant projects which aren't for sale, but don't have an owner because the government is sitting on the license and they don't know what to do with it. They know it could turn into, again, a world-class asset. It could be hundreds of millions of tons at probably 3 or 4%. We're talking about the richest rare earth projects here. And they're just waiting to see what to do with them. So it'd be great to get our hands on something like that, but we have to prove ourselves that we are experienced enough, large enough, capable enough to take on something of that size, because there'd be no point taking it on and not being able to do anything with it. But at the same time, it'd be a shame if, a large Chinese mining company got hold of it. And I think that's the dichotomy these governments are going through at the moment. So we're trying to prove ourselves by meeting our deadlines, keeping the cash coming in, getting the license renewed on time, employing the local population, working with a local partner, paying our taxes, doing everything in order to sort of build up a CV. So when we do want to go for these larger projects, we will do.
Obviously, you're more on the financial side, right? But who's the guy within Altona? I guess what people need to have confidence in here is that he knows which projects to go after. And what gives you guys an edge over finding those projects and then actually acquiring them, right?
Okay. So Cedric is French. He's about my age. He's a qualified geologist. Moved to Africa about 25 years ago, lives in Kenya, but he also has a house now in Mozambique. Has worked on many different projects as a consultant, has worked on some large projects with the French government and French companies taking projects to production. So he's seen the sort of the whole life of a mine. So when he was introduced to us, he's a very affable guy, but he's a geologist at heart. So he's hungry to find stuff. Our only concern I might have is if we sort of get entrenched in 3 or 4 projects and they're doing it, what does Cedric do? So we, got to keep him busy. So I said he's on the road today, driving to the southern part of Mozambique to sort of look at some more concessions, some more tenements, whether they may be viable or not. I'm just not sure. So his background is not necessarily in rare earths, but oddly, the previous owners of Monte Moambe, a company called Globe Metals, were looking for fluorite at the site. And Cedric, when he came on, and this was 12 years ago, and Cedric had actually been a sort of chief geologist at a fluorite site also in Africa, and said, these figures were rubbish. They did the right thing to do, but look at this. And then every so often he'll send me a presentation dated 2012 or 2015, and it's about a rare earth project he was looking at, but just, I don't know, because he was bored one evening, or for a bit of homework. I don't know what it was, but he's literally like a bloodhound, and he is absolute genius, really lovely guy. We're incredibly lucky to have him.
And just looking a bit more forward, obviously we've got the LSE listing coming up in, I think you were talking around 30th of September, right? Or around September time.
Let's say before the end of September.
Yeah, okay.
You can cross your fingers for that.
Good, I will do. What milestones should investors be looking out for other than that, in terms of what could they get excited about over the next 6 to 12 months?
Sure. We're doing some more soil sampling. This crater, old sort of defunct millennia ago volcanic crater, it's 5 kilometers by 4 kilometers. So the base about 19 square kilometers inside. And we're currently working on targets 1, 4, and 9. We've discounted some others, but there's still areas left. So we're going to be finishing off the soil sampling where they dig to maybe 2 meters. Every sort of 25 meters, and they sample it all. We have portable sampling machines on site. So everything is instantaneous. We can see whether this is worth marking, and when the drilling season starts again, we can bring back in. So the drilling crew is a company called Spartan. They've been with us now for about a year. Really cool South African guys. They managed to get into this crater. It took them, the first time they got in, it took them 3 days. So I actually went down to Mozambique last year to meet them and see the first 3 days of drilling. But my time there at the camp was up and I had to leave. And as I was driving, they were finally managing to get this sort of 6x6 drill rig up the road. So these guys are, they're explorers, they're adventurers, but they certainly know how to drill holes. So I think they have more, maybe between 5 and 10 more holes. So we've got a new zone that we'll be announcing. We've got a soil sampling results. Come January, we'll be putting the resource estimate, which we have no reason to believe won't be similar to the exploration target we released a couple of weeks ago. And then the PEA will come probably in the second quarter of next year. It's the scoping study as well, and metallurgy as well. So we're starting to see a real picture at Monte Moambe, not just the size and the sort of average grade, but which rare earths are there. Do we have the neodymium, praseodymium, the ones that are going to go in the batteries for the cars and the wind turbines, the key markets? Is there some terbium, dysprosium, which are $1,000+ a kilo? Or is it stuff full of cerium, the ones that polish glass, which is sort of 50 cents? So it's going to be opening up a real picture. It's different from a gold mine or a copper mine, which is a single, source. Especially gold, there's a market for it. This grade is worth this, and it's all regulated. We're almost in the Wild West. I don't particularly want to call it that, but there is no regulation really. If you get rare earths out of the ground at this time, you got to ship it to China, and then they process it, refine it, and then they sell it back. But what the Chinese are doing now, with sort of their 10-year plan, they're not just selling rare earths back to Europe or the US. They're now putting them in the drivetrains of the cars or the wind turbines, or they're putting them in the mobile phones, or they're putting them into missile systems for the defense industry. And if you want a to build a electric vehicle, for example, the chances are getting more and more slim that you're going to be buying a European one, you're probably buying a Chinese one. And that's something that I don't think people over here realize or can fathom. You know, it'll probably be like when Toyota and Honda and the Japanese brands sort of came into the UK in the 60s and 70s. And now obviously they've got manufacturing plants all over the UK, fantastic cars. But at the time, people were sort of looking at Datsuns and things thinking, what are these funny little things? But China is on the march. You know, they've already bought MG, which is a 100-year British vehicle mark. So people who are driving MG electric vehicles and possibly don't realize that it's a Chinese car. Similar Polestar, which is an awesome looking electric vehicle. It's a Swedish company, but it's actually backed by China. So the Chinese are already coming into the UK in the electric vehicle market, but through things that we recognize. But the largest electric vehicle company in China, BYD, I guess we're going to start seeing their models on the road soon.
So just to clarify though, so in terms of your next 12 to 18 months, it sounds like you've got the soil sampling, you've got some drilling going on, you'll have a new MRE.
Yeah.
Your position will increase from 20% to 51% in March.
Yeah.
And then looking actually at some economics on this thing fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Really.
6 months, yeah. And maybe a couple of other projects.
And then potentially some acquisitions in the time being.
Yeah.
I mean, for a 2-3 million market cap company, there's a lot that could go right, and there's a lot of excitement for the future. So I think it's one of them where obviously the market now needs to see you deliver on these things.
It's true. Look, operationally, the company's sound, and we deliver on every milestone we've set ourselves. Being an Aquis, it's been slightly difficult, and I'm sure if an investor who doesn't own the stock, or has never heard of this company before, has a look at us, they'll wonder why our share price is basically flatlined for the last 9 months at 8p. I'm hoping that moving to the LSE will correct that. It will awaken people's interest. I know for a fact that people, I'm talking about the retail market here, refuse to buy Aquis shares because it's very difficult to exit those positions. If that situation resolves itself, then we're hoping for some proper sort of orderly trading in the stock once we get onto the LSE. And see that share price rise, because there's lots in the pipeline. And Monte Moambi on its own is, you know, this project is worth a considerable amount.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the metallurgy as well. Hopefully you do have some of the higher value.
No, we already know
quality.
We put out a good report, I think, the last time we put it out. So we're good at NdPr at above sort of 5%, which is probably double what some of our AIM-listed competitors, some of our AIM-listed peers are reporting. But of course, we're 4 or 5 years behind these guys. You know, they've been doing this for a long time. We're on season 2, and we've got a couple more drilling seasons to go before we can get anywhere close to putting out a feasibility study. But the feasibility study is sort of lined up for, let's say, the end of 2024.
Okay, that's good.
That's the target. So we are moving quickly because our chief operating officer knows where to drill, where not to drill, not waste time. We're not putting in thousands of holes. We're doing it very, very methodically and very, very carefully. So if we can get to BFS, DFS by sort of the end of 2024, then we can make the big decision. Do we take it forward? Do we find a funding partner, or do we sell it?
We'll continue tracking the story, but Christian, great to see you.
Thank you very much.